I met the matriarchs of the auto industry, these older women with, really old, gnarled hands and lots of rings. And I explained what angel investing was. And, the two of them sort of held my hand and said, Robbie, we're really good at giving money away, but we have no idea how to make it. Our husbands made it and sort of patted us on the head and said, don't worry about it. But I don't want my daughter or granddaughter. Will you come back and do this?
Welcome to Triangle Tweener Talks, a weekly podcast by builders for builders where we explore the startup journey from the idea to the exit and all the lessons in between with an exclusive focus on founders from the Triangle region of North Carolina. Tweener Talks is produced by Earfluence. Now here's your host, serial founder and general partner of the Triangle Tweener Fund, Scot Wingo.
In this episode of Triangle Tweener Talks, we have an interview with Robbie Hardy. This episode is sponsored by Robinson Bradshaw, a full-service business law firm with a passion for supporting the Triangle entrepreneurial ecosystem. Learn more about Robinson Bradshaw's startups and venture capital practice at robinsonbradshaw.com. Also, Smashing Boxes, a Durham-based lean design-centric digital transformation company. You can learn more about them at smashingboxes.com. Special thanks to our friends at Earfluence who produced the podcast. Robbie's story is one of resilience, adaptability, and a deep commitment to supporting and empowering future generations, especially women, in tech and entrepreneurship. Robbie founded her first company in 1993 and sold the company 2 years later. She's helped build several angel groups in the Triangle. Most recently, she founded xElle, which is a group of female angel investors that invest in female-founded businesses. Finally, Robbie reveals some exclusive sneak peeks about her forthcoming book. And if you're a fan of her previous books, you'll want to hear all about them. And now, here is my conversation with Robbie Hardy, a 1990s era female founder, a good friend of mine, and a huge asset to the Triangle startup ecosystem. Hey, Robbie, thanks for coming on Triangle Talks. I'm excited to sit down and chat with you. It's been a while since we actually had time to chat. We go by each other at conferences and say hello, but I haven't gotten an update from you.
Yeah, it's been many years.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's go back to the beginning. So you have been a woman in Triangle startups since I can remember.
Yes,
I think
before you were
me.
born, probably.
Yes.
Yes, my first startup was in 1993.
Okay. Awesome.
But because I came from the corporate world, so I had been there playing that game.
Yeah. What'd you do where'd you go to school?
I didn't.
Okay. So you went from high school into corporate?
I went high school, and I did a bunch of courses. I just never graduated. I have lots of coursework, but I never actually got a degree.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow. That's cool.
I know. Opportunities came.
That's like the hip thing now.
Well, I know. It wasn't
way ahead
hip
of
then.
the curve.
Yeah, right. Of
I'm
course.
sure
Always.
didn't think it was very hip.
Well, my parents, they were. Back, it was okay. They were, okay, do what you do. But so I had opportunities, and I also had to support my ex-husband in graduate school. So.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so then you got some corporate jobs. Like what kinds of things were you doing in corporate?
Primarily it was in consulting to large, Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies, building solutions. They were, software solutions. I'm not technical. I tried to be, but I realized I was not good at it and I didn't like it. So I know enough to be dangerous, but I just got in on the management side. Mm-hmm. So we'd go into, Mobil Oil or GlaxoSmithKline or whatever and build a solution. The problem with it in the corporate world is that, we'd get a contract to build some great piece of software and the management would change and we'd never finish it. And so this lack of closure became this big thing for me. We were doing sort of very successful things, but being able to actually finish things. So I started building Legos when I was home so that I could read the directions, which I'm not a person that follows directions, so that I could actually have something and say, yeah, it was just an interesting experience.
So you're a big Lego person. What's one of your favorite Lego sets you remember?
Well, I have not done Legos in years.
Okay, but back then, what were?
Back then they were they were pretty simple. Yeah. So, and I just didn't.
It's like a car or something.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it didn't really sort of matter. I just needed to be able to build it.
Yeah, you needed to get something.
I needed to be able to accomplish. Yeah, so for my team, and I didn't build them with them, but it was my therapy. Yeah,
and where were you in the U.S. at this point?
I was in I started here and then in Chapel Hill, and then I was in Boston and Pennsylvania.
Okay, so you're a native
DC.
Chapel Hillian?
No, I'm a native of Massachusetts, north of Boston.
Okay, and then one of the corporate jobs got you here to
So I
Chapel
came
Hill?
down here for my husband going to graduate school.
Okay.
And so I worked for the university. Actually, I worked for a daycare. I drove a bus. I didn't have a job. I was a kindergarten teacher. I didn't have a clue. I'd been here 2 days, and some guy knocked on my door at my apartment way out in sort of what was in the middle of nowhere in Chapel Hill and said, "We need a teacher." I'm like, okay. And let me teach you how to drive this bus. I'm like, okay. And so that's how it started. So that's how I ended up not finishing, because it was sort of one thing would lead to another.
Yeah, found a job. Yeah. Okay, so then you're doing corporate America, and then what led you to leave that and do a startup in the early 90s?
So I kept thinking there had to be something more. I was always the only woman in the room, but I kind of didn't know that was weird because I didn't know anything else. It was the only thing I had.
It wasn't weird, really. It was kind of the norm.
And so I just was sort of not feeling fulfilled and feeling like there had to be more. And I was being, patted on the head about what a great job I was doing and how successful I was being and yada, yada, yada. And it just didn't feel right. So I had decided I was going to leave and figure something out. And when I went to turn in my resignation, my boss said, "Oh, no, you can't leave." Of course, I was a woman, and I was on the management committee. It was a publicly traded company, et cetera, et cetera. So they said, "Why don't you take a leave of absence?" And they kind of patted me on the head, which was very offensive. But I was smart enough not to tell them what I really thought, so I took them up on it. And I took some time, and I flew to Colorado and went hiking in the fall in the aspens and sort of let them talk to me, and thought, I need to do something else where I can make the culture fit me and fit the team and, try to build something. One of the things of building things in the corporate software world is you build the same thing over and over and over for different clients. And so I used to say that, why don't we do a product? They're like, "Oh, no, we want the billable hours." And so all that grind of billable hours or whatever. So I came back and I said I had figured out what the product I thought that would make sense when we'd built a million times in the business. And they became my first client. So I bootstrapped my first company.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. And so we worked for the client during the day, and we built the product on nights and weekends.
Interesting. Cool. And that was here in...
That was here in Chapel Hill.
Yeah. Well, was it like a CRM system or...
No,
something?
it was a batch scheduler.
Ah, okay.
So it was, and the fact of the matter, it's still in place in somewhere. So, so what we did is we networked PCs together back in the day when the PCs just sat idle at night. Mm-hmm. And so we networked them together because, buying more mainframe time, more CPUs and stuff was very expensive. So it was using what was already there and making that work. So we had built this scheduling thing for lots of companies, but this was the first time that, so my idea was, well, could we do this? And and so we did. We built it.
Yeah. So they had some workload, and they would normally send it to a mainframe, which was really
right.
expensive.
So it's the processing of your bank statements, your bills, everything that would get batched.
Yeah. And then you guys made it so instead of doing that, you had a cheaper one where it could go to a network of PCs.
So the PCs, it was just it allowed them to take another channel to process.
Neat. That's cool.
Yes. Yeah. So we were at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
As who knows when that's going to be.
Yeah. And what was that company called?
CI Technologies.
CI Technologies. Okay, got it. Yeah. So you start that in 93.
Mm-hmm.
Was Ed involved in that in some way?
Ed Whitehorn?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, he was an investor.
Okay.
So I
knew you guys were connected back then. I never understood.
Yeah. So we were. So I raised angel money.
Mm-hmm.
Ed Whitehorn, Richard Holcomb, Chris Spey. I can't. Anyway, a handful.
Well, oldies but goodies.
Yeah, oldies but goodies. Yeah. Richard had just exited Hot. I think I can't remember. Right.
Yeah. The timing gets all
right.
Up. Cool. So you start this thing. You were a sole founder, and you get some angel money, and then tell us what happens on that journey.
So I was looking for space and trying to be very frugal. The interesting thing is I had come from the corporate world where I mean, there was lots of money. I mean, we just threw money at things. You needed something, you just bought it or you moved it or somehow you acquired it. And I was not in that situation. I was trying to figure out how to do this by, and I didn't understand. I mean, I had worked in M&A in the corporate world, but I certainly didn't understand it from the company side. And so, raising money and all that was, I knew about it, but it was not something that I was comfortable with. So I sat in Bruegger's in Chapel Hill and interviewed programmers that I put an ad on Craigslist or one of those awful things. And I hired the team, and my husband was the chief technology officer, which nobody knew till after we exited because we have different last names, because that, would have not gone over. And so, we just started building it. And my employer was, having us do work for companies. We were just doing, consulting work, building pieces, for clients, et cetera. And so it looked like it was going to work. It was not, cash flow was not exactly like it should be. Yeah. And so I was putting some,
because you had consulting dollars.
We did, but the consulting dollars and the outgo did not match. You know how you have, we're good. We can do this for a long time. So I was putting payroll on my credit cards. I actually, there was some, I didn't have a payroll. I hadn't subscribed to a payroll system. And so there was money in the bank and I used it and thinking, I can pay that back in 30 days. Well, 90 days later. And so I did, and I don't ever want anyone to do that. Always have a payroll system, but it was just how,
it wasn't as easy as it, you had to go with like the big ones. It was a whole ordeal.
Well, and actually it turns out there was smaller ones that I could do, but I just didn't, and I thought I can do that. Of course I can do that. I'm an entrepreneur. I can do anything. That mindset that we think we can always figure it out and do it better than everybody else.
Yeah. Cool. So then, how big did the company get?
We were 25 people when we sold.
Okay, cool. And you got acquired? We
got acquired unexpectedly. I was in the midst of I was talking to Mitch Muma at Inner South, and people didn't know, I was this woman running a technology company. It was a little weird. And I had gone to a trade show in Vegas, and which was kind of an annual thing. It's now it's more hardware. I forget what it's called. But anyway. And so I get a call a few weeks after one of those trips, and I didn't know who it was, so I didn't return the call. And I didn't return the call. And I didn't return the call. And then finally, a call, somebody I knew who had called, they said, look, these guys want to talk to you. I'm like, oh, okay. So you know how you get so focused on what you're doing, I'm not going to be distracted by whatever.
And everyone wants to sell you something when you start a company.
Right.
So you're like, there's something.
Yeah, exactly. So long story short, it was Seagate, the hardware company, and they were acquiring software companies because they didn't like how Wall Street treated hardware. They wanted that multiple that you get for software. So they were on this path to acquire a bunch of software companies. It was still a tiny bit of their business, but it made, Al Shugart happy, and that's what he wanted to do. So we had this scheduling system, which worked for them for all kinds of reasons. It was just this perfect
And it's probably
fit.
good because it uses the hard drive. So
it uses the hard drive, and it allowed a lot of other things to happen for other companies that they acquired that were having issues that this solved.
Very nice. Good. Yeah. Right time and
right time, right place. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So the trade show was probably Comdex. Is that
yes, it was absolutely.
Yeah. My dad was a COBOL mainframe person, and he he loved Comdex and would go every year and come back.
Yeah, you had to go every year. I know. You'd go every year. It was so cold and rainy. Yes. Anyway.
Yeah. So you started in 93, and then Seagate acquired you when?
1995.
95. So 2 years. That's a fast turnaround.
It was awesome. A very fast turnaround. Yeah. The site, you know how it is for the acquisition. It was not as quick as one would expect, but.
Yeah. And then do you remember, was it like an all cash or did it have an earnout?
No, it had I remember it very well.
Everyone remembers the transaction.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you have to all those steps to get there. Yeah. So it was cash and an earnout. Yeah. Yeah, they had so much cash. I mean, they had, boatloads of cash.
Yeah, and sometimes when you're public, the only way to spend it is on acquisitions, right? Correct. The easiest way to spend money.
Correct.
Especially if it can be accretive.
Right. So, so there was an earnout. So I was an indentured servant for 2 years.
Yeah. Was that life-changing money at that point? Or, give us an idea, the zone of that?
I can't. I mean, I signed a lot of documents that I can't say what it is. It was life-changing.
Yeah. Nice. Did you change anything? I've known you and you haven't ever changed. So I imagine that didn't change you, but.
Well, here's the thing. What changed is that I was all in on this business.
Yeah.
And I had mortgaged my house and we were close to foreclosure.
Wow.
So it was, trying to roll with it and be, cool and going, ugh. So it was like, I got to pay off my house.
So you went from the hairy edge of like days away from foreclosure to selling the company, even though you didn't return the phone calls. In hindsight, you probably should have returned those earlier. But sometimes that actually works to your advantage because they're like, they thought
I was playing hard to get when I was just, I was just oblivious.
Yeah.
Right. I just didn't want to.
So then you go like, boom. So now you can solve all your financial problems. That must have been amazing.
It was, it's sort of weird when you go from from one extreme to the other. So it wasn't, anything other than being able to sleep at night.
Yeah. I found it's like for founders that have gone through that, it's kind of like my grandfather went through the Depression. Even whenever he had money, he would never spend it. So they tend
there was
to be
a little bit of that.
Relatively parsimonious. So I'm sure you didn't go out and buy a Ferrari. You're just like, all right.
No, but I did go out and buy a new car. Yes, which I then sold probably 3 months later because it was this Mercedes convertible that was just not me. I mean, I love convertibles. It was just not. So it was like, this is not me. When I'd get in it, I'm like, So
cool. So that kind of like course correct to your style.
Yeah, well, you just have to find out who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you've sold your company, and now you're, and usually there's a lot of pain in this part of the story. So now you've sold your this thing you've committed your entire life to for. I know it's only a couple of years, but,
right? But you know how it
probably
is.
working 100-hour weeks, and just like you've like
sleeping at the office,
and both of you too. So it's just like a Herculean thing. And then what happened when they acquired you? Afterwards, what was that 2 years like?
So there were 9 CEOs. They weren't sure how to handle an acquisition. It's not easy to incorporate it into the business. And so there were 9 CEOs, 9 CTOs. The CFOs were, of course, all gone. And I was the only one that didn't want to be in charge of this new division. Because I just wanted out. I left the corporate world for a reason. I really wasn't anxious to go back.
Yeah.
So it was, you learn completely different things. So I sort of, enjoyed the learnings, met some really great, interesting people, met some really obnoxious, the hardware culture is very different than the software culture. Yeah. And then me being a woman, so I really got the real full brunt. I had more discrimination and more issues after that where I was supposedly made it. It was just, but it was it was really, nobody was trying to do anything mean. It was just culturally very different.
Yeah.
So
was that because it was different international cultures, or was it just like the hardware world was like?
No, it's just it was.
Women are dumb and can't do hardware.
Correct. Well, women aren't in it, and if you are, get my coffee.
Yeah. Okay.
So I had that. I got the coffee thing in a lot of meetings.
I would have enjoyed watching them.
I was very polite. I was just like, it's right over there. Yeah. Yeah. But I had already had experience in that. So for my whole career, so I knew that game.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you did your 2 years. They had 9 COs, I imagine, because they had done a lot of acquisitions.
Yes, they did. Yeah, we were the 14th acquisition.
Yeah. Did you lean in and like tell them how to do it, or you're just kind of like a little bit checked out at that point?
No, you try to embrace. You've got 2 years seems like eternity that you're going to be in, and so I tried to embrace it and try to get what I could out of it. And but I was, and it was, I didn't. I'm sure I tried to tell them how to do it, but I learned quickly that wasn't the game. And my colleagues were all, the battle to be the one, left standing was. So I kept volunteering. I'm good, I don't need to do that. So
I'll take a check.
Yeah, I'll do something else. So I probably took a much lower profile role, and I worked on a couple of things because I just didn't, I didn't want to go back to that.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to make it clear. I did everything I was supposed to. I mean, obviously we had a lot of money on the line. So
yeah. Did that earn out period end up being okay, or was
everything
it one of those
fine.
earn-outs where they totally hose you over? Or?
No, they did not.
That's good.
No. So and the other thing is that when I knew enough from my corporate experience. So when the acquisition talks started happening, and we started getting serious, I asked them if I could meet some of the CEOs of the companies that they had acquired, because I did want to understand. Having been on the M&A side, on the company side of M&A, I knew a lot of the games that can get played. So I learned a lot that way. And so, all the feedback was very positive about how the financial transaction and basically, the salaries and all that stuff and taking care of the employees, because for people coming from a startup to, a big company, it's a big change. They have all these benefits that they didn't have before. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So you did your 2 years. At that point, were you thinking about your next thing, or did you just do your 2 years and then
No, I was always, no, of course not. No, I was thinking about, Ray Allen was a guy who I met when I was trying to raise angel money. And Ray did not invest in the company, but he helped me. I told him I thought my weakest point was marketing. And he said, well, let's put a marketing advisory board together. And he put these people together, and we'd meet every 3 weeks or so. He would organize it. They made introductions. I mean, he was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Ray Allen...
he founded CII.
Right.
And CII still exists. He founded it in 81. And it's still going.
Yeah, I need to add him to my my OG level.
Yeah, exactly.
Chart.
So, and, I learned from him, and just from everyone, my investors had been people that had been successful before, and then had, which is obviously not unusual. And so I was really into paying it forward. Mm-hmm. And Fred Hutchison was my lawyer. And so he started making introductions, because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So wanted to get thinking about angel investing, again, which I thought I knew a lot about, but I didn't. It's always different when you're on the other side of either of these desks. But so I started doing some angel investing. And
so it's probably like 1997 around this time.
So I started angel investing in 95. I did my first investment, I think it was in Ganymede with Tim Huntley.
Uh-huh.
And then another one was with Illumins, which I put into bankruptcy. I was on their board and ended up years later putting it into bankruptcy because they were just ahead of their time. It was immersion technology. Big domes, when you'd go in and you could do, flight simulation, et cetera.
Oh, I don't remember that one. That must have been one of the UNC graphics people or something.
No, it was, I think the founders were from UNC, but it was, had a very weird history. But anyway, they had great technology. They were just way ahead of their time. And they raised $25 million, and, it's you get all that money, and using it wisely is not always what happens.
Fancy furniture.
Well, just a lot of things that, when they really needed money, it wasn't there until the investors were. And of course, back then, that was a lot of money.
Yeah. Ganymede had a good outcome.
They certainly did.
Yeah, that was a good one. Cool. So you started angel investing, and then I ran across you when you started Atlantis. When did that?
Oh, that was 2000.
That was 2000. Okay. So we've got a lot of time to fill in there.
It's not that interesting.
So 95 to 2000, what were you up to?
So the whole idea of angel investing, so paying it forward was really important to me. And so paying it forward by angel investing, but also paying it forward by sharing what I'd learned with others, people coming along. Mm-hmm. So I started a group called CI Partners. We went from CI Technologies, which I sold, to CI Partners.
And there was CII. There's why did the Triangle have so many CI-related companies? I don't know.
Hard to say. Maybe we couldn't once you got those letters, you were stuck. And so it was Ed Whitehorn, Dave Neal, Robert Dale, me, and a guy named Leonard Homer, who doesn't live here anymore. And so we were working with, mentoring, coaching startups and looking at them for investment, et cetera. So we did a lot of that in that time. I also was really heavily involved with CED. So I spent a lot of time. And I was also learning about angel investing, and because I was in TIG.
I was going to ask if you're in TIG.
Oh, yeah. I remember you. I remember you from TIG.
TIG 1, 2, or 3?
I was in TIG 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
One
What were
was,
the time frames? Do you remember?
Oof.
Someone was asking me about this, and I was like,
So TIG, I'd have to look, but the last TIG coincided with Atlantis.
Yeah.
It was all in the same time frame. I think it was TIG 2, 3, and 4. I think there were 4. I could be wrong.
oh, okay. Was there a 1?
So I spent a lot of time understanding that, and then spending time doing lunch and learns for CED, trying to get people to understand, investors understand what this was. So I went from sort of thinking I knew everything to thinking I knew nothing to actually figuring it out and kind of putting the pieces together so we could talk about, what is a term sheet? And how do we treat entrepreneurs? And that was a big thing for me. And part of the reason why being the only woman in my, and very outspoken was hard for everybody, because I don't know how you get treated when you came to pitch, but it was brutal.
Yeah, TIG was like one of the hardest.
And it was without cause. And yeah. I have never, I don't care what it is. Your opinion really doesn't matter whether because you don't know. Who knows? The pet rock is what I always use. Who would have ever thought? A lot of things. Google.
Yeah.
And so, passing judgment and touting your expertise and name dropping and, calling them, and just being rude. And it was hard. And so I was trying to change that. Mm-hmm. And so part of the way I was trying to change it was trying to educate these people who wanted to be angel investors about what did it really mean? What is, I did all this stuff. What is a term sheet? What is this? What is convertible debt? Yada, yada, yada. But what is it that we do when we meet and talk to entrepreneurs about what they're doing and how can we help them, et cetera? So
yeah,
that became still a big passion of mine. So I don't handle it well when that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot better.
It has, but there are plenty of places where it happens.
Yeah, I kind of wish TIG still existed so people knew how well they when they complained to me. I'm like, oh, you don't know.
Have no idea, right?
Did you ever pitch that weird group in Charlotte that was like in this really weird retail building? They were like you would go into like the back of this retail building and it was like fake wood panel. It was very strange.
I think I missed that.
It was like 10 old dudes like sipping coffee, just kind of like ignoring you. And you're just like,
well, it's always, it was always white men over 50.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So CD, that was the Monica Doss era.
That was the Monica Doss era.
Yeah, she had a huge impact on all of us.
Right.
Obviously, Sproul. I remember meeting him when he was like a intern at CD, or I forget what his job was.
I know I forget what he was doing, but it is interesting because he had already been Harris. What's her first name? Tracy. She was. I remember her. She was an interesting intern, Tracy Scott, and I was so impressed with her. And I started having sort of always 3 or 4 women I mentored or coached who I thought had a lot of potential. And so she was one of those women I was like, wow. And boy, does she go places.
Yeah, I didn't see her for like 10 years. And I was on a plane next to her. I was like, what are you up to? And she's like, oh, I'm managing like $100 billion fund. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I forget what the number was, but it was sufficiently big that I can't remember.
Yeah, she's done extraordinarily well.
That was amazing.
Yeah, she did amazing. So, so it was an interesting time. And CI Partners was, cranking along, doing a bunch of things. And I had an idea for another company. So that's what happened in the late 90s, not that we weren't late, but probably 1998, we started a company called Intrasoft, which later became KV Labs, which later closed.
Okay.
So it was one of these situations where bad hiring by me for our sales guy. I knew better. I drank the Kool-Aid. My gut was screaming. I thought, but, anyway. So that's one. That's a bad position to have a bad hire. And also the product was too complicated.
What was the
So it was
product?
How to, to manage your PCs through the registry. And you could make these changes to the registry to do all this stuff. And it was very powerful.
It's like a very early computer associates manage a network of PCs, kind of remote.
Right, and you could do the PCs, and of course you could do a lot of good, but you could also do a lot of harm. So, but we got the harm, and the product actually worked, and it was great. But I think the user, there's a lot of you try to look at, what went wrong, because there's more lessons learned when you fail than when you're successful.
Absolutely.
And so there were just a lot of things. The salesperson was probably the icing on the cake. I recognized it. I tried to go out and sell it and do, I was flying all over the place. And finally I just, we returned the money, whatever money we had, and called it a day.
Yeah. Tell us, so that was 98 to win?
98 to just before, it may have been 97 to 99. That's kind of, I should have looked these dates up, but
that's right.
It's close enough.
Yeah. Well, it was, it was good that you had the foresight to say, hey, this isn't working out. Let's go.
Well, yeah, I stood on the street with a cop trying to raise money. I went and talked to, I had made lots, a big proponent of having a great network, and I happened to have built a great network. So I could go talk to lots of people about what I could do with this technology. And it just, it didn't, there was lots of interest, but you know how it is. And then, death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone had the problem, and they're like, weren't sure this.
Well, they weren't sure they wanted to step into that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that stinks. So then,
well, it happens,
Yeah. So you had a win and a fail. Then, did you dust yourself off and jump back in? What happened next?
So, yeah, we definitely did. And we had built in CI Partners, we had built some technology pieces that got sold off, not for big money, but just to kind of be the core of various things. Mm-hmm. Again, more back office, boring stuff than anything fun and interesting. And then I got serious about angel investing. And of course, I always thought there was a better way. And I also thought it was time for there to be more women at the table. Mm-hmm. So naive. Oh my God. I was going to
start somewhere.
Yeah, you do. I thought I was going to have all these women, and it would be women investors. It wasn't to invest in women because there weren't many women entrepreneurs. That was, not a thing. Problem. And so, but I thought there'd be a lot of women. Well, I ended up with 6. And that a fund does not make. Mm-hmm. And so that took me 6 months. And I realized that, sort of waking up that this isn't going to work this way. And there was demand, and people were saying, let us in. Mm-hmm. So I did. Yep. And so like in 2 weeks, we had 80 people.
So that was Atlantis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I joined as an LP, so I must have sold my first company by then. Yeah. Okay. 95 to 98. Yep. So I'd sold Stingray, and I probably because Atlantis. So I just started Auction Rover, I think. Yeah.
Well, because Atlantis invested in Channel Advisor.
Yeah, that was 01. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was yeah. Because I remember your signs when you had Auction Rover. It was "Are you roving?" They were all over the triangle. I thought it was such a great viral way to do that, and the name worked. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that was fun.
It was. Yeah, that was great.
So then Atlantis was one of these type of where you buy these units and there's committed capital, and it's kind of a syndicate.
Well, it's just, it's a fund.
It's a fund. It's a real fund.
It's a fund. But the thing that made it really complicated and weird is then you did this. So if the fund was going to put in $5 and the entrepreneur needed 10, then people could put their own money in to make up that 5. So there was always these add-ons.
Yeah.
That was herding cats was better than that.
Yeah, and it was before you could just go online and spin up an SPV with like 5 clicks. So you had to go to the lawyers.
It would just go alongside. We didn't even do an SPV. It went in. It just had to be accounted for. The accounting was like a nightmare.
So they would each go on the cap table individually.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah, but to you, it was all the same.
Yeah. And then how much do you remember that Atlantis first fund? Was that like?
It was about $4 million.
4 million?
4 or 5. 4, and I forget. Yeah.
Yeah. What were some of the investments in Atlantis one that you remember?
Channel Advisor.
Did that one do good?
Did okay. The CEO is kind of a jerk. But
yeah. Well,
he turned out okay.
That's how you motivate people sometimes.
Pardon me?
That's how you motivate people. Tell them they're dumb and do it better.
Right.
Yes. Like really gets them going.
Yes, it was very successful. Wow. I should be able to remember. I was gonna go back there and look, and I was not doing.
Yeah. I remember being on some of the committee things, and what I noticed was a lot of people gravitate towards biotech. Like in a lot of these groups, there's always this like gravity to biotech. And as a software person, I don't understand it. I get that, and I don't like investing in biotech because I
have to
can't
pick a
discern
big
what's
hole.
good or bad.
Well, it's hard enough to discern what's good and bad. We're
Yeah.
not doing that. And you have to dig a really big hole and fill it full of money before you...
For 10 years
Yeah,
until you get
exactly,
FDA approval.
Exactly. So
but it all sounds good because they're all curing diseases, which
right.
I'm all
And
on
I
board
think
for.
there were, it's still that. I mean, there's a lot, well, I mean, there aren't a lot of firms that invest in biotech here, but, and there weren't then, but there was I think there were a lot of people who had been successful who had come out of biotech.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what leaned, because it was like, and they didn't, they didn't understand software and technology and that kind of stuff. So there was always a big, push-pull for what was the best things to invest in.
Yeah. So is that pretty much your full-time gig running Atlantis for kind of 2000?
Pretty much running, and sort of, and I had started a coaching business. I'd kind of made it more formal. So I was doing a lot of CEO coaching quietly, so no one would know because investors back then weren't really a fan of that, and they thought that their CEO should know everything they need to know. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that has been
coached. It was a weakness, I guess.
Exactly, to admit. So, and I still have that business, and I'm finally. And now I'm only taking anybody that I worked with before if they have, if they're still doing, if they, have a deal or an issue or whatever. But by the end of the year, it's going to be over.
Yeah. Okay. So then you did Atlantis for a while, and then there was an Atlantis 2, right?
There was.
Yeah. And then that was about the
same.
And
it went on forever. I mean, Atlantis went on until 2015.
Wow.
So when we talk about a quick hit, it just, because of the, we had 2008, 2010, whatever. So I stopped being, heavily involved probably, after 2006.
I remember like someone just volunteered to be the administrator for kind of like the
they were being paid. I mean, we had
volunteered.
There was enough in the the fund had a percentage to go for that. So yes, that prolonged life a long time. So and Chris Maton and I were still, he was the attorney, and he was great and did a lot to help xElle. Atlantis be successful. Yeah. He's a really great guy. I met him when he was a baby lawyer, but I met all these people when they were baby lawyers or accountants or whatever. So
Chris Maton may have more coffees than I do because I see him at half my coffees. So therefore, I think
he's always been a big coffee guy.
He is really networking a lot.
He always does it. Always. And he's a really helpful, kind, thoughtful, funny guy.
He's very much a pay forward, which a lot of our lawyers are, which is kind of unique. You would think they wouldn't be because they want billable hours, but I think they see that it comes back.
They do.
Yeah,
they do.
Okay, so then you've been doing Atlantis, and then that kind of 2007, you kind of phased out of that.
Well, so I had already started working on. Again, it was this. We could sort of see the economy sort of changing and trying to stimulate entrepreneurship, and so I developed, along with Teresa Spangler, who just passed away, by the way, and other people, A Million Dreams Across America. And so it was sort of my baby, but we did it under the Plaza Bridge umbrella initially. And the idea was to, teach people about entrepreneurship in a way that they could just pop in and, to something. So the UNC Business School said, yes, you can use, they partnered with me, and we could use, their auditorium in the business school. And I had Wachovia Bank as my sponsor. Nice. So I was rocking. And then the financial markets imploded, and Wachovia Bank was no more. And they're like,
we'd like to talk to you about this sponsorship.
And Wells Fargo's like, and who are you? And no, we're not doing that. So we had a few successful, these things were an all day. I still have so much of this material, but the good news is that the Kauffman Foundation, when the auto industry and the financial market, imploded, they wanted to, do work in Detroit and Charlotte. And so I got called. They said, we hear you have, from Monica told them this woman has this program. So I went and worked for the Kauffman Foundation for 2 years as a strategic consultant. and I took A Million Dreams Across America to Detroit, renamed it, rejiggered it. And that was probably one of the most fulfilling experiences I've ever had.
Now, I don't know much about the Million Dreams thing, so tell me more.
So
about
A Million Dreams is, it was you'd come, it was an all day, and we had, examples. What we did is we built a hot dog stand together, because when you have like if you think about the hot dog stands outside of Home Depot, I mean, obviously not literally, but figuratively, and breaking up into groups, because you have all these regulatory issues. I mean, it's kind of an interesting.
Yeah. So it's a nice on-ramp into startups. Of
So
all
you
the stuff you have to
so you could talk about all the things you have to do. And so we would have lawyer there for a session on, they could ask questions. There was some, it was an education and a lot of interaction and a lot of, where you could go through and figure out how to do this. And, there were, all that type of thing. And then there were follow-ons after that every month until there weren't.
Yeah.
So it
was it specifically for females, or it was like
no, it was
anyone that wants to start a business?
Not in those days. Yeah, no, anybody that wanted to start a business. And so and it was $95.
So it wasn't even like high tech. It was like, I want to have my own haircut place.
But we didn't get it. We didn't, I think it was because I was the technology person, and because I was a woman, I was the technology woman. So I think, we didn't have lifestyle. And if we had, because we screened them and we said, well, this probably isn't going to work for you for these reasons. So we tried to, meet them where they are and not let them come in and not be able to.
Yeah. Is this somehow affiliated with the Million Cups thing, or that's some other million?
Oh, no, completely different. Okay. That's much like,
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what a Million Cups is, right? That's the cold coffee.
Okay. We used to have one here, but it's gone now or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I tried researching it and couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, well, they do it in Wilmington. Talk to Jim Roberts.
That'll be a long conversation.
Could be short.
Tell us a little bit about Teresa Spengler. So there's a Spengler family, and they did drywall or something. Is she part of that family or no?
No.
Different. Okay.
No.
Yeah. Right.
No. So she was here, and she and I met through all the CED stuff, and so she and I, she and I had a company, and our husbands were also involved.
Okay.
So there's another story.
Okay.
Long story short, we did some great things together, but we're both strong, so we parted ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a founder fit thing sometimes.
Well, and two strong women was,
Yeah.
And the husbands kind of didn't want. They were like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
So anyway, she went off and did her thing, and we had created this entity called Plaza Bridge. So I gave her that and said, you take it and run with it. I was doing A Million Dreams and other stuff. So yeah.
I got it. Okay. Cool. So it must have been fun to be at the Kauffman Foundation, because they're like, all they think about is entrepreneurship. I really enjoy their content they put out, and I'm sure you got in the belly of the beast. It may not have been as awesome.
Sort of like, it's like watching paint dry a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's a think tank.
Yeah.
So, the entrepreneur in me is like, okay, let's do this. And, now you get it, all these processes. Anyway, it was a fascinating experience, because when I first went to talk to them, it's in Kansas City. And, I'm thinking.
Good barbecue.
Well, I hadn't thought about that. I was like, what am I going to do in Kansas City? And so, the car from the airport taking me to Kauffman, and I'm going, and and all of a sudden there's Tiffany's and St. John's and all this in this plaza. It's like, what is going on here? So it was and a lot of money there, halls of Hallmark cards. So it was a very interesting experience. And it allowed me to go to Detroit and do all this work. And then I got to work with, for the good and the bad, all the other foundations, Ford and Kresge and Kellogg and all of those. So it was a lot of for me, because I'd be like, okay, let's do this. And they're like, no, it'll probably take 6 to 9 months. And, I'm thinking 6 to 9 days. But
could you dial your aspirations back out? That's all I get from nonprofits. Like, that's exciting, but we can't do any of that. And I'm just like, why not?
Yeah, because that's not what we do.
Yeah.
So I did have some influence on them, because I was annoying, and they figured that maybe if I do something, I would,
let her do something so she'll get out of her head.
Right. So it was amazing, we did these, and there was a lot of money to work with because all these foundations wanted to have their name on this, rebuilding of Detroit and stimulating entrepreneurship. So we did these sessions, on Saturday mornings where it was open to, hundreds of people. And, people would come in, on a Saturday morning early, your head would be down anyway because you're thinking, why am I not still in bed? But these people, didn't know what they were going to do. And they'd leave with hope. Mm-hmm. So I just got to work with, incubators starting and accelerators starting. And there was a women's foundation, and they asked me to speak to them about angel investing. They wanted to do a fund and have women investors. So I met the matriarchs of the auto industry, these older women with, really old, gnarled hands and lots of rings. And I explained what angel investing was, and, the two of them sort of held my hand and said, Robbie, we're really good at giving money away, but we have no idea how to make it. Our husbands made it and sort of patted us on the head and said, don't worry about it. But I don't want my daughter or granddaughter. Will you come back and do this again and let them be there? So that was a great experience, which was kind of the stimulus for me to figure out how to do a women's fund again after my fail in making Atlantis be a women's fund.
Yeah. What that time frame seemed to have a big impact on you. Are there any interesting? I mean, that's a good story. Did you? I'm imagining these kind of grizzled UAW workers that are unemployed that may have an idea. Did you have any interesting success stories, or do you remember any stories from that?
No, well, because they were. We didn't see them. I was. We were seeing a different. They weren't cohort. We were seeing a different mob every week.
Yeah. Okay. So you didn't get to
so we didn't really get to follow them. No. So it was completely different. So, and I learned a lot about that too. It really teaches you how to meet people where they are because they're so different every time, and not, have any preconceived notions of what's going on.
Yeah. Cool. Did you go back and do the thing for the daughters and granddaughters?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Did they ever do a fund? Or?
They did.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Cool.
They did.
Yeah. So that had an impact, and then you wanted to start. What time frame are we in, kind of after this Kaufman era?
So I was with Kaufman. I left Kaufman in 2010.
2010.
And so burned out. Oh my God. I thought I'm never going to work again. I'm not doing anything else. Anyway. And
the great financial crisis was it was kind of like COVID. It was like one of those 2-year periods that aged you like 10 years.
Yeah. It was hard. We did a little bit of work in Charlotte, but not nearly. I mean, the need in Detroit was just massive. Yeah. And of course I went there thinking, I don't want to work in Detroit. I mean, I can remember being again in the back of a car coming from the airport and going through all this,
8 Mile. Yeah.
So anyway, but it all ended up working out very well. And I met some very interesting people, great experience.
Yeah. Yeah. The car people are interesting.
Yeah. The whole city is very interesting. And, everybody and all the people from the foundations and everybody's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So it was very good.
So it's 2010. You're done with Detroit. You're exhausted.
I'm done with Detroit. I'm exhausted. I'm headed to Hawaii for Christmas. My daughter and her husband moved there in 2004. Mm-hmm. So we would go there every year. We'd rent a house, whatever. And I was trying to think about, of course, I was thinking about what I was going to do next. I was still doing my coaching business throughout all this. So that was always there. So that, filled my cup in many ways. And my mom passed away while I was there. And so it was one of these things where my husband and I said, maybe we'll move here. And our daughter and her husband kept saying, you'll be fine here. You both can work remotely. You'll love it, et cetera, et cetera. So.
And here is Hawaii at this point.
Yes, we were in Hawaii. So we moved to Hawaii in 2011. And I was doing, I was still doing a lot of coaching here, and the 5 and 6 hour time difference was painful.
Yeah. And we didn't have Zoom. We had WebEx or something.
Really we had the phone.
Log me in.
A lot of phone. And there were. It was just hard, but it was very interesting. But the other piece that happened is we'd been coming to Hawaii for years, renting houses at Christmas and having a lot of friends and family come. and I got to know this company that, this property management company that rented houses, et cetera. And so I got to know the owners, and they asked me if I'd help them look at the business and see if there were other ways, they could make money or whatever. So I did, and I discovered that they were embezzling money out of their trust account.
Ooh, uh-oh.
So that was like, okay, so the entrepreneur in me is like, I can do this. I don't know anything about this, but I'm here in Hawaii. I can run this business. So I took over the business and said, I won't turn you in. We'll figure out, we're going to let everybody know. We're going to pay it back, and I'm going to start another business. So Ann Miller, who worked for me, and then she did Atlantis. She finished out Atlantis, and then she went off on her own doing stuff. So she was the sane person doing all the, the infrastructure and the financial, and I was the person in Hawaii, trying to sort of manage it all. So I had a vacation rental business called Paradise Luxury Rentals.
It was a tricky situation to get yourself into and then out of.
Oh yeah, I know. It wasn't without a lot of issues, but it was interesting. And of course, the owners were used to whoever is managing their property being very subservient to them. And I don't do that well.
Yeah.
I mean, I can be polite and respectful. Yeah. And so it was, but they, I went and I flew and saw all of them. I met them wherever they were, if they weren't in Hawaii, to sort of talk about it. Because these were, significant, $12, $15 million homes. And so that part got settled, and hired people and kind of changed it around, added a cold concierge service because these people are coming and they didn't want to have to think about anything. So that really increased. That was what I was starting with the other person. And then President Obama would come. We were living in Kailua, Hawaii, and that's where it was based, and that's where he would come for Christmas. So we had the contract to put the Navy SEALs and all these people in houses within a certain distance of where the president was staying, that it had to be if it was a situation room or the medical tent or the whatever. Wow. So that was interesting. So, the thing of it is you just never know the experience that you might have when you, say yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I bet you automated a lot of their systems too. They probably had paper and you.
Well, the interesting thing was, it was, yes, but there were a bunch of there were a bunch of products. And so we tried a bunch of them, and Robert would try to make it work for me. I'm like, I can't, but eventually you just, it had to work for so many people. But yeah, we found a path.
You're obviously back here now. So then, what
I left there in 2013.
What was the impetus for that? Why'd you come back?
We'd been there 3 years, and while we loved it, we just kind of couldn't find our tribe, and it was, if you wanted to, we're foodies and, wine people and whatever. And so that just didn't quite work out. It was great to be with our daughter and her husband, but so we thought, okay. And it was really hard. I mean, Robert and his brother had a business, and the time change was just exhausting because that was in Virginia. So we decided to move to Napa. We'd spent a lot of time in Napa on our license. We were 9 people. And so that would be 5 hours to Hawaii, 5 hours here. Mm-hmm. And so we moved to Napa, and that's where I wrote my first book. Huh. So which was kind of another one of those things. I thought, okay, so the vacation rental business, my daughter and Ann carried it on until they didn't, and they sold it. And I had been in lots of wineries, and I thought there must be something here I can do. I'm sure I can make something better, of course. So I started meeting with all these wineries and winemakers and whatever. And, their biggest problem was not making money. You could put in $1 million and come out with nothing. And it was just sort of, so obvious to me, they were pouring most of it away, in their tasting rooms they did just an amazing amount of charitable events they're assumed that all these wineries can do that. So I did a little bit of work for doing that, but I couldn't charge them for it because it was just so obvious, know? So anyway, so I did that.
You got a little trade, so you got some vino on the.
Yeah. And so, And so then I started, I had always been wanted to, there were 3 books that I had wanted to write. What I was trying to do is I really wanted to have an impact on women, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. I had tried a million different things, and I wanted to be able to change that world. And it obviously is harder than one thinks, but my naivete was that, of course I can. So I decided, well, maybe a book. I'd done all this mentoring, and I had done all this speaking, et cetera. So I started writing a book, and which I knew nothing about. And so I ended up...
Did you have a publisher? Like, did you do a treatment and then get a publisher? You just like wrote it straight up?
No, I didn't. I waited. I didn't do a publisher. And then I got introduced through this weird circumstance up to this woman who was she was a writer and she was a coach. She coached people writing books. And so I met her, we hit it off. And so she helped me through. She would, come, we'd meet, and I would, and interesting, I couldn't figure out, I think it's being anyway, I couldn't sit at my desk and write. And so I walk a lot. So there were vineyards all around us. So I started walking in the vineyards, and I'd think of all this stuff. But of course, I couldn't remember it. So I just started recording on my phone and started transcribing it back in the day when it was not a lot of that, but there was some. Mm-hmm. And that's how that book was born. And she helped me and coached me, and I still work with her.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. But I did not. So I talked to publishers. Mm-hmm. And again, it was like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that either. Mm-hmm. So I self-published it.
Very cool. Yeah, on like a Lulu or one of those, or like the Amazon self-publishing?
Yeah, Amazon, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, Lulu was in its weird space at that time. Yeah, I talked to, anyway, yeah, that was kind of a weird time because that was 2016.
Yeah.
So I did that. And
what was the book called, and how did it do?
It's called Upsetting the Table. Mm-hmm. And it was the first book, and it was about, and I told it as a fable. It's actually, a story where there were characters, et cetera, and it was about a woman climbing a corporate ladder and trying to help them. So I did it that way because I felt like people might be able to remember it better versus, when you walk in the room, you do X, Y, or Z. It's like, oh, Jessica did whatever. So the funny thing is that people would ask me about Jessica and other characters. And of course, when I was fresh from the book, it made sense. But when I got away, I was like, who is to myself? Who is Jessica? And so it still happens today. So that was the first book. And the second book I just did in 23, which was called Fed Up to Startup, which was the story of a woman leaving the corporate world and starting.
Is this still Jessica or a new cast?
No, it's Rebecca now. Okay. Yeah, so there's all these characters because they come together in the third book.
Oh, okay. So this is a trilogy. You're doing this. George Lucas, Star Wars.
Yeah, right. So then the third book, which keeps other things keep getting in the way, is about women angel investing. And again, what I learned over the years about women is that they like to know what they're doing. They don't like to jump in when they don't know if there's enough water in the pool. Where I probably will jump in and assume that I can fill it. Mm-hmm. That's not normal. Mm-hmm. And so trying to help them feel comfortable, and not in a way that you educate them like they're in a class or anything, but through anecdotal, et cetera, et cetera. So I have it all outlined. I've got, sort of how do you talk about a save or, what is that? And making it so that it makes sense and they can, again, relate to it. Because I've been successful in the first 2 books where people comment, the feedback I get is, oh my God, it just makes so much sense. And they'll, I can remember that now. And so it's helping them, I'm trying to help them feel comfortable because my mission is to, it has been that way for a long time, is to increase the number of women angel investors so that we can increase the money going to women. Instead of me bitching at all the white men that I would invest with, why can't we do this? It was finally, I looked in the mirror about 10 years ago. I was like, okay, yeah, this is your fault. So get on.
Yeah. There's also a pipeline thing, and you've we'll get to it, but you talk a lot at university. We'll get to that. Can you tell us the name of the character of the next book? Like, give us a super secret preview. We've had Jessica and Rebecca.
Jessica and Rebecca and Louise.
Louise.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Louise was an investor in Rebecca's company.
Ah, okay. Is this the first time this has been revealed?
Yes.
All right.
On here, yeah.
Super
Yes, and
exciting.
so Liz and other characters, and Jessica from the first book is also going to come in there because she ended up leaving.
The trilogy, it all comes together.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But it's really, I'm just lazy using those characters, and because it's kind of fun to do that because it gives you some storyline and whatever. But they can help tell the story so that, and what it could be, it isn't. I mean, it's aimed towards women because men are more able to follow their colleague, whereas women really want, if it's about money, they want to understand. So.
Yeah. Cool. And it's oddly autobiographical. If we kind of
it's always
zoom
from
out a
my,
little
it's
bit.
from, well, the nice thing is I can make, I use, the core of it is my experience, but I can, tweak it up to make it more interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of fun putting it on other characters because it doesn't feel like you're talking about yourself, which is always,
well, and you can also change things that,
yeah,
for whatever, for the good or the bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she married Tom Cruise. And he whisked her off to Hollywood.
Woo.
Okay, so you did your first book. You put that out there. And then, so that was 2016.
Correct.
Then what did you do after that?
We moved back here.
Ah, okay. And then what was the impetus for that? Got burned out on Napa?
No, God, we loved Napa. I mean, it was a really great experience. And it was another experience where I ended up meeting a lot of interesting women winemakers. That's a whole nother world. And investors in wine. So when I was there, I didn't know anybody, but I met people. You meet people, sitting at the bar and all the restaurants because your locals sit at the bar and you kind of get you can sort of see what to have on the menu and they help you out because it's expensive. And you meet all these fabulous people from around the world. And through all that, I met a couple of women who were local, and I got invited to be in a book club. Now, I had never been in a book club my whole life because I was always working and traveling, and I didn't understand how that worked. So I said yes to both. And one was in the afternoon, which seemed very odd to me. How could anybody have time in the afternoon to do a book club? Obviously, that's why people have book clubs. Yeah. So I'm slow to learn. And the other were all women winemakers.
Cool.
And they couldn't be any more different. So I learned a lot about both sides of that coin. So it was a great experience.
Yeah. Did it have you wanting to have a winery, or?
No, I knew enough about that. I knew enough about that not to have a winery. Because I was another experience way back between when I left the corporate world and when I actually started, or as I was leaving, and I started CI Technologies, which was it was kind of on the side. A children's clothing. It was a Color Me Tea for the girls and an Explorer bag for the boys. And I was, I was making glue bags and sequin bags and pom-pom bags in my basement. It was all getting packaged together. And I had sold into Nordstrom and Bed Bath & Beyond and was thinking I was rocking it because this was to get kids away from the screen. This is back in the day. And little did we know what would happen with screens. And I was sick, and I was looking at an Excel spreadsheet, and I was, in bed, I had the flu or something. And I started looking at it, and it was like, I'm not going to make it. This will never make money. You can't make money in volume for this. So it was one of those things. It's funny how you kind of recognize. So I've had a few of those recognizing that this isn't going to work. So, yeah.
So then why'd you go from Napa to the Triangle?
So we were on a plane all the time. I had actually picked up some clients in Virginia. We were there that much. And so we decided we'd come back for 3 years and then we'd move back. So we rented our house and we came back. And I was not going to get back involved in the entrepreneurial community. I wasn't going to do anything. I was going to lay low.
Didn't even tell anyone you were back.
I was not. And so I got invited to something. It was at the Bull. The Durham Bull, that used to be the PNC. I don't know who owns it now. We have that conference space. Yeah. And so I came in and I got in the elevator to go up, and there was Jim Verdonick. And I'm like, and he's like, Robbie, what are you doing back? Oh, you must be going to do the Women's Angel Fund. I'm like, so that was the end. Anyway, so I just, one thing led to another. The business that my husband and his brother had got sold, so that's sort of whatever. And we just started getting back. We had a lot of friends here, so we just started getting back. And then the fires started in Napa, and we were very lucky. It came close a couple of times to the house, but not. And so then one day somebody called us and wanted to buy it because they wanted to buy our house, and another one to do a hot air balloon business.
Okay.
So we sold it.
Interesting. So you don't have the Napa property anymore?
No.
It's a hot air balloon business.
Yeah, well, actually, it isn't a hot air balloon business either, but
it probably didn't work out.
yeah.
Okay. So then, so what time frame did you move back to the Triangle?
The end of 2016.
2016. Okay. So then what'd you do between there and, what was next? So you got back into the entrepreneurial community.
Yeah, I did. And so I was, I was doing a lot of coaching.
Yeah.
And I also started A Million Dreams Across. No, I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from. Empowering women.
Okay.
And so I was working on a variety of things, and it was still my way to try to get women to be able to stand tall and own the room and increase their self-confidence and know that they're enough, et cetera, et cetera. So Empowering Women Together was born, and it was successful. I mean, I just did it on a whim. Back in 2003, when Wilmington was barely beginning as an entrepreneurial thing, CED did an event down there, sort of where the ocean meets the future. And so I was on the planning committee, and somebody dropped out, a panel dropped out, and I was driving back from a meeting down there, and I had said, I'll take it. Mm-hmm. So why this came about, I don't know, but I decided we would have 10 women, and we would talk about, each would give a lesson about, what are the things that you should know about being an entrepreneur or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we got these 10 women together, and we put this together, and we had and I knew it would be different to see 10 women sitting at a panel in 2003.
Yeah.
And everybody had a really, it was very crisp messaging. This is what you do. I still have the slides. They're hysterical. When we were finished, the room was packed because the curiosity. And the first thing people said is, why are you all wearing black? Now, we thought we had just imparted all this knowledge. And you just wanted to say, but, so it was successful, but in a weird way. We went back the next year and did it. And it was, what do we wish we knew last year that we know this year? And I got them all to wear pink. Now this is not a group of women that easily wears pink. So it was that kind of, we are here and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, a little bit of a middle finger, like, yeah.
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 Yeah. But it was pink.
Yeah. That's good marketing. It got someone's attention, right?
Well, yeah. It wasn't as good as Are You Rovin', but.
Hey, anytime you get someone's attention that's half of it.
Right. Well, exactly.
It's like
yes.
a
And so
world.
eventually, it started to change some things.
Yeah. And then how did that morph into Empowering Women Together?
Well, that was that was long before that, but it was, so I'm sorry. Yes. So what I was going to do in Empowering Women, I was going to bring back that 10 women panel.
Like a retrospective.
And every month there would be a different topic. So I wanted to talk about failure as the first one. So I got as many of the 10 as I could back and filled in with others. And so that's how it started. Okay. So, it was an hour and a half. Each of them would give their, advice. They'd talk, then it opened up, the interactive part being the majority of it, which is, of course, what I love. And we were doing it at First Flight. And it went from 30 women to 40 women to 50 to 60 to 70. And the room only holds 75, and it's not comfortable then.
Yeah.
And we couldn't go any bigger. And it just took off. And it was just me. And I was doing other stuff, too. I was still coaching and doing anyway. So I thought, this needs more than me. Plus, I was trying to start xElle. So I met some people, and I said, somebody needs to take this. And so Bobby Francis, or Francis Bobby, sorry, she thought, well, we'll take this. And they're a financial advising firm whose name escapes me at the moment, which is not good. And so they started to, and then they changed it. They did it to try to, give back to women and try to get more, obviously they're trying to get more women clients, but so it still lives, and just in a very different fashion. But it just was crazy. I mean, if I'd planned it for a year, it wouldn't have happened that way. It resonated.
Well, I think maybe.
So a lot of things have come from that, other things, there's a lot of, little kinds of things that are trying to do similar things.
Yeah, I think by 2003 it was too early, but by 2015 there was like the pipeline was filling up and people were ready to receive your message better.
Right, and so this was in like 2018.
Yeah,
at Empowering Women. So it was just I was using the 2003 as we took that and did that again and it worked then and it worked extremely effectively. And the fun part is sort of like when I get stuff about the book, I still get people saying, I met my now business partner, or I met so-and-so at Empowering Women. I met all these people. So they made all these connections which is what it was all about. Yeah. So, because the power of connections is powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said there you were trying to start xElle. Say more. What's xElle?
So I was trying to start, it was nameless. It was going to be a women's angel fund. And I had been talking to people around the triangle, trying to figure out what was the right model. And I got invited to talk to some women's groups who did public investing. They did those investor dinners and they'd invest in public companies. And so I would talk to them about, what I was thinking. And, somebody would raise their hand and say, what's an angel? So that's where we were. Mm-hmm. But through all those conversations and conversations I had all over the country were women were interested, but they weren't interested in putting forth $25,000 or $50,000 to figure that out when they didn't know better.
Yeah.
And understanding equity, while it has a lot of complications to it, but that's what the lawyers do. But in theory, it's manageable to understand, but it just didn't resonate. But everybody understands a loan.
Yeah.
And having been involved with so many companies over the years, there's plenty of things that companies need that equity isn't necessarily required. If you need to be able to buy more volume, or you need to be able to buy, more box, whatever it is that you need to, use money for. And in my humble opinion, it teaches people about managing money, and it's other people's money, and how do you not abuse it, and how do you make it work, and how do you leverage it, and all that kind of stuff. So that's how it came about.
So it's good for first-time investors, because if you're a first-time angel investor, as you learned at Atlantis, you start in it's like a 10 to 15 year payback period. And that's a very long emotional period to have invested money, and then that J curve they call it now. Yeah. And then also it hurts because you get your losses first. So you take this risk, you get punched in the face. And then after you're punched in the face, you get your middling returns next. So you're like, okay, I got a little bit of money out of here, but it wasn't what I put in. And then your wins come so much later.
Right.
So what's nice about debt is you start to get some money back pretty quickly.
Yes.
Almost immediately, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Like there's an interest period and a principal.
We cut so the buy-in was $10,000. And they can get, paid back twice a year. And still it's all, knock on wood, even though this isn't wood. So it's a whole different, it's like, how does this fit in the triangle model? So there's been a lot of noise and good and bad or whatever. And so I contacted 25 women and said, this is what I want to do. Will you come help me? 15 of them showed up for a meeting. 14, because one of them moved to London, so that didn't work. And so they worked with me, and they weren't all experienced investors, but they sort of found that interesting. And so we worked through, and I wanted their buy-in or not. I didn't want it to be the Robbie Hardy way. I wanted it to be where all these women would understand it and could speak about it in a way that made sense, because they really understood it.
Yeah.
So that was a much longer process than normal, but it came together in 2019.
So
and it was a network, not a fund.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of like a syndicate kind of a deal.
It was just, and of course it was what we were trying to do was let women feel in control of their money. Mm-hmm. What we did to them is they had to not only pick the company, they also had to figure out how much, et cetera, et cetera. So,
So that
so that beginning was it was interesting. So we moved it to a fund in 21.
okay. So just so that listeners and watchers understand, it's xElle.
xElle.
xElle Ventures.
xElle Ventures.
Mm-hmm.
xElleventures.com.
Yep. And again, it's xElle. Yeah.
Correct.
Whenever I tell people, they think EX.
They think it's not the spreadsheet.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that's clever spelling is the ELLE, a nod to
women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I assumed, but I wanted to hear it from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jennifer was involved in that.
Jennifer was involved. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it started as a syndicate in 2019 and then
then moved to a fund in 2021.
21. Okay. And it's still ongoing.
It's so they're getting ready to raise fund too. So
Nice.
I am sort of chair emeritus. I stepped away because it was really too much the Robbie Hardy fund, and I'm getting older, and so you need to always pass it.
Yeah.
So it was not everyone thought I was just abandoning it, and lots of bad blood, so to speak. But it has worked out. You just sometimes have to take that leap and struggle, whatever. But they have really, figured it out. And It's fun to watch these women who are now on the screening committee or on, loan review and who, didn't know anything about it, but now they're comfortable. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I've sent a lot of female founders to you guys.
Yeah. And so pitch. And of course the difference is we can't take them too early. They have to have revenue because they have to be able to pay the loan back. So, and we won't even sometimes, and so most of the work is done looking at, how do they make money and all those kinds of things. It's a very different due diligence than what you do for equity. So that was new and interesting for me also. And so, we also don't want to burden an entrepreneur when they think they need $100,000, they can't afford to pay back $100,000. And that would be, if they were trying to raise money, I mean, it would, you don't want to burden their books with something that, is going to keep an investor from investing or them to be able to be successful.
Yeah. So what's the usual amount that you guys will do?
Well, they always ask for 100. Mm-hmm. Of course, if that's your max, 25 to 100, you need 100. It is, now it's mostly tranched, sort of like, 25 or 50.
Based or something.
Yeah. So that we don't get them, out of whack.
Yeah. Good. That's a neat model. I'm sure. Do you guys think of it kind of like venture debt where you like to come in with a round, or it can be independent? You're just looking at cash flow.
We don't come in with, we don't, no, we don't do it with a round.
Okay.
It's a unique, it's to help solve a problem, some problem they have that can be solved with this amount of money or take them to the next level with this amount of money.
Yeah, sometimes buying some inventory can be a good thing for that.
Yeah,
and buying piece of equipment or something.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Those are really good for a debt where you can kind of like tie it to a thing.
And of course, things happen.
Yeah. So how many? Do you know how many companies you guys have supported?
I think we have. I think there are 7.
7. Mm-hmm.
Don't quote me on that though, because it's on the website. I should know because they just sent out the report of guess they're getting ready for fund 2 and
So female founders only.
Yeah, they have to be, there can be men in the C-suite, but the woman has to have at least 50% ownership.
Okay. And then it's a debt kind of component, 25 to 100K, and people go to the website to start the process.
They do.
And they have to have some revenue.
Yes, they have to have some revenue.
So pre-seed, kind of, I've got an idea, is not a really good fit.
Well, unless you define pre-seed as when you're going to raise $5 million. So, that's, I mean, I've been spending time in the biotech world, so it takes on a whole new level. So.
Yeah. For me, pre-seed is like, I've got an idea.
Yeah,
no revenue.
I'm with you completely. Yeah. I just want for the audience to know that we really mean pre-seed. I don't have any revenue.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't, Right.
Okay, got it.
I'm just getting started.
Cool. So you kind of saw that through the syndicate phase to fund 1 in 2021.
And got the fund up and running, and then I'm still there as an advisor. I help them do things, but it's run.
Yeah. So when you converted it to a fund, that solved some of the complexities of people having to decide.
Yes, exactly.
So then they just would put X in.
Yeah, they just put the minimum is 10 million, and they can put more or less.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And Pappas Capital actually is an investor.
Oh, interesting. Very cool. Yeah.
I've known Art for years. He was an investor in Atlantis.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was because
I know I've met him somewhere. It must have been in Atlantis meetings or something.
Yeah, well, probably I don't think he never, I mean, because it's not his, I mean, he's a biotech guy, but, he wanted to sort of see what's going on, and he likes to support women, so.
Very cool. What size was Fund 1, and what do you think Fund 2 will be?
Fund 1 was under $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's the other thing is we couldn't have too much money to, till the process needed to work before we,
Yeah.
So Fund 2, the goal is $2 million.
Awesome. 2X is pretty amazing.
So now there's a lot more women that understand. I mean, there's been a lot of education that's happened. There's a lot more. And so now, and women have learned, I mean, not that they didn't know this before, but there are more people who are sort of out there networking, and there's now a lot more opportunities here in the Triangle for women to, come in. So, a lot of conversations with all these other groups that are popping up.
Yeah, we don't track it, but Crunchbase does. I think they say 23 to 30 of the tweener funds investments are underrepresented. They don't really
nice.
break that out.
Yeah.
I think the biggest class is women, and then the other classes. But yeah, it's it's been interesting to watch that. Just like seeing the pitches and things coming in, the number of female founders is just up.
Yeah, it's starting to
right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we had the pandemic hurt it, and then it's it's coming back. But the tweener fund is brilliant. So
thanks. Okay, so you were doing all that. Was there something else going on in parallel, or xElle Ventures took the bulk of your time?
xElle Ventures and the coaching took the bulk of my time, and I was writing my second book.
Yeah. Okay. So then what you, somewhere between 21 and 24, you phased out of xElle.
I phased out of xElle. I published my book in 23, did that whole shtick. And
still self-published?
Still self-published. Yeah, I know. It is interesting.
Yeah.
And I had people, it isn't that people don't want to publish you. It's just you have to want to do. And at the end of the day, in this market, the way it is now, I mean, their difference is, unless you're, Michelle Obama, I mean, you have to have a lot of.
It used to be having a publisher, they could actually,
open doors.
Yeah, generate demand at Barnes. They would get Barnes & Noble to order like a bunch of copies or something like that worked. But like now.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters for some people. And so I was trying to figure out what else I was going to do. And Brooks Malone introduced me to a guy at Duke, Jeff Welch, who runs Duke New Ventures, and which is a mentoring program, which I didn't know about. And so I had lunch with him, and I came armed with names because I figured he was looking for mentors. Mm-hmm. And he was, but he wanted me. And I was like, I haven't worked for anybody since 1993. You do not want me. Yeah. I do not. Yeah. I don't herd well. I'm not, anyway.
Hard to manage, uncoachable.
Yeah. All those things. Right. And so, so we decided to give it a try. And so that was in 21. And so, I'm still doing it. It's been a fascinating experience.
Now, are you mentoring students or?
No, they're mostly, they're PhD students. So, if you're at a university and you're a PhD student or you're a faculty or a secretary or whatever, the university owns your intellectual property that you produce. So if you're an undergrad, it's yours because you're paying tuition, depending which way the money goes. If you're in the business school, you're paying tuition, and but anyway, but all these others are getting stipends or salaries or whatever. So there's a healthcare group part, and that's the majority. I think there are 9 of us. There's 6 there, and then there are 3 of us in the software hardware side.
Okay, and you're on the software side.
Yeah, and so I have met people that I otherwise wouldn't have. I get to I'm doing a lot of AI stuff that's actually sort of, it's also got a medical component. So it's sort of software as a medical device.
Yeah, all that stuff is all squished together.
So it's really, it's really fascinating to do that. And so these people, they all have full-time jobs, and some of them want to leave, some of them don't. So it's about recruiting. It's about helping them. The goal is to help them commercialize. It has to get licensed out. And do they form a company, or do they just license it out? And do we need to find a management team for them? And they don't. You really take them from the really early stage to kind of figure out.
Because they're scientists, they understand the technology. They have no idea how to do any of this other stuff. So it's been a great experience. So it's been a big, wide variety of things. Yeah. So that's let me kind of restate it so I understand. Sure. So that's the tech transfer kind of group.
Well, it is under tech transfer is is this Duke New Ventures.
Yeah. So then these ideas are coming out of students and profs, mostly PhD students.
Yeah.
And then you guys are figuring out,
So
how do
they
you
come
help
in
them
and they
commercialize it?
say, I need help. And so they get screened and whatever. And then one of us gets brought in to say, yeah, I think I can help them. And so off we go.
Yeah. And this isn't, so this is one of the things that Duke does that's entrepreneurial. Then there's Jamie
Jones. Yes. And that's mostly undergraduates.
Yeah.
And some graduate students.
Yeah.
And it's like everything else in a university, lots of silos. And then there's another group in the Pratt School of Engineering that does the same thing.
Yeah.
And there may be some other group that I don't know about, but yeah.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I haven't met the Pratt people yet. That's on my pretty
Bill
high
Walker.
priority for me. Yeah. Yeah. They seem like they're up to really cool stuff over there.
The really cool place is biomedical engineering.
Yeah. I can't understand that though.
No, you can.
It's like, it all sounds good.
No.
Yeah.
This makes all, If I can understand it, you can
Okay.
understand it. Yeah. Trust me. Yeah.
Okay. They always have like nanotubes that'll like swim through your bloodstream and do stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. So you enjoy like seeing all that new technology and
Well, so there are people I would have otherwise not met, completely different issues, lots of interesting things. So yeah, it has been, it's been fun.
yeah. Is there a classroom component to that or
No. It's all code. Most of it's all on Zoom.
No, I understand.
Because these guys have labs or whatever. So, I had a fencing coach who wanted to be able to teach people fencing, so it'd be 3D, but the technology, we couldn't get it fine enough because the way fencing works, you have to get, the point has to, so that didn't work. And I had a guy who was in, film school who had done a way to take, film apart and create something else out of the existing film. So, that along with,
Yeah.
So
at first, that kind of variety, having been super myopic, is hard to deal with, and then you get kind of addicted to it. It's kind of like fun.
I've had a lot of variety in the coaching business I have, but this is just completely different.
Yeah.
And so it's been great fun. I'll probably be done. I'm not taking on any new clients. I'm just finishing up with the ones I have.
Okay. Are you going to retire again?
Well, I'm working with a bunch of there's some international women's organizations and whatever. So I'm going to go back and focus like that, because after a while, it's like I get tired of listening to myself, even talking to these poor people that I coach and mentor,
Yeah.
So it's like I need a break.
Yeah. So you're doing that, but phasing out. You're phased out of xElle. What else are you up to? So you're going to start doing this?
I'm trying to work on my third book.
Working on the third book. Got to get that out.
I think that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd like to, and I just think it's time for me to, but I won't.
I don't see you slowing down.
No, well,
I think you kind of ebb and then you'll
I
get
figure
bored
out. Yeah. So it's funny. Sort of right now, I'm like, I got tired. What I realized when I just came back I was in California last week, and I realized that what I was wanting to get rid of was always doing this. Oh God, I have I have to get here. Oh, I have a Zoom. Oh, because I have, too many clients, too many appointments, too many shifting of gears, and that's what I need a break.
Yeah. Get off the treadmill.
Yeah, get off that. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Is her daughter still in Hawaii? And you get to go see her?
She is.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, they've been there since 2004.
Yeah. Any grandkids yet or
no? Not going to happen.
All right, not going to happen.
No,
All
they
right.
decided no. They were never on the same page. They're very happy, so all is well.
All good. Yeah. Well, anything else you want to share with listeners and readers before we wrap up? That was I learned a ton of stuff. I think I knew like 80% of that. So,
that's pretty good.
I knew 20% and I learned 80%. So
yeah. Well, no, it's fun to talk to you. I'd love to be interviewing you because I've been following you all these years, and so it was,
maybe you can start a podcast.
Yeah. Well, I did that once.
Okay.
And I thought about doing it again about women investing but I'm trying to figure out the right.
There's probably something around your books that you could kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I don't know, there's this new book, Likeable Badass.
I know. Yeah.
And,
I'm going to meet with, I forget her name, but so she and I have been talking on.
Yeah. Angela. Yeah. And then I think the author. And then a lot of the people I know in the Triangle that are in our startup world have really glommed onto that.
Oh, yeah.
And started
it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's great.
But that's an example of where your book could be a framework for
It could be. Oh, yeah. It's not that. I just have
trilogy.
to. Yeah, I have to decide.
The Hardy trilogy.
Decide that's a good idea. We'll see.
Yeah.
So are you enjoying doing podcasting?
I do. Yeah. I've been doing it for a long time on e-commerce.
Right.
Like a super vertical. No one in the Triangle really listens to it, but it's.
That's okay.
Yeah. I've been doing that for a while. I like the fact that you don't really prepare for it and the conversation meanders. I kind of like that versus writing. You have to have a whole you have to have a destination, and you got to have a framework for getting there and all that stuff. So I like kind of the unstructured nature of podcasts.
Yeah. Well, you can do the same thing. Then you get somebody to help you structure it. It's like you write it and then they go, well, yeah. So in the whole self-publishing, then you do hire people to do editing and stuff because they, you drop characters off. I mean, it's amazing the things you do that when you get it back and it's all read, you're like, oh my God. But then you start reading that, you introduced Liz here, but she, she just never appeared again.
Like, oh yeah, I forgot about Liz.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for the time.
You. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and good luck with whatever you decide to do.
Thank you. And we'll have to see each other more often.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Thanks.
Bye.
For more tweener content, check out the Triangle Tweener Times Substack at tweener.substack.com. For more tweener content, check out tweenertimes.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again soon on Triangle Tweener Talks.